Hello, I'm JC and welcome back to the Arsenal Box. I hope you're doing well. Today I'll be breaking down all the numbers on where things went wrong in our unfortunate start to the new Premier League season, losing away from home 2-0 to Brentford. I'll also be going through where we might be able to improve in the future with Chelsea just around the corner. If you're new around here, please do subscribe and hit that like button if you do enjoy today's episode. But let's not waste no time at all and dive straight into things. Kicking off with the starting 11, did Arteta get it right? Unfortunately, Aubameyang and Lacazette were unavailable very late on in the day due to illness. Speculation suggesting it could be a little more than that behind the scenes, but will we ever know? Let's just wait and see. It was a debut for Balogun, someone who signed a new contract with Arsenal last season, so you half expect him to get some minutes. And with the ceiling very high for this young lad, I thought it was a very, very good opportunity for him to go out and impress. Likewise, we had Ben White and Lokonga making their Premier League debuts. Lokonga may not have started if Partey wasn't injured, but Ben White, I have no doubts that he would have started regardless of who else would have been available in that back line. Kieran Tierney, he will be our first choice left back throughout the season, so no questions there. Likewise with Leno in goals. I think as the season progresses, we may see Gabriel secure a first starting berth at left centre-back. Right back, however, Callum Chambers did look a little shaky at times there yesterday, and eventually he did move into right centre-back. However, there are the likes of Bellerin and Cedric who could come in and compete for a starting spot at right back. Nicolas Pepe out on the right side, not really a surprise there. He ended last season very, very well, and I'm half expecting him to have a very, very big season. However, his performance yesterday was somewhat underwhelming, and with Gabriel Martinelli on the left-hand side, a very, very exciting player for the future. Not long got back from the Olympics where he won a gold medal. He did eventually move into a striker position, and then probably one of our best players on the pitch alongside Kieran Tierney was Emile Smith-Rowe, finally carrying that number 10 shirt. What a lot of responsibility. I think if we really kind of strip it back and analyse who was picked and who else could have been picked, this was probably our strongest 11. We had a fairly weak bench yesterday, and that front four prior to the game was a very, very exciting one. However, the result did not transpire, and it was a very, very disappointing start to the season. Let me know down in the comments below if you would have made any changes to that starting 11. Up next, we have match stats. Brentford on the left, Arsenal on the right. I do appreciate stats aren't necessarily for everyone, as it doesn't always tell the full story of what unfolded in a particular fixture. And on the face of things, if you looked at just the stats, and you had to take an educated guess as to who won the game, or at least dominated the game, you would say Arsenal, looking at these stats right now. However, it certainly was not the case. It was a very, very frustrating game, to say the very least, with 65% possession and a total of 22 shots, but only 4 of them on target. So you have to ask yourself the question, was it a case of these shots not being clear-cut enough? Was it a case of Balogun not having that quality and confidence, being at the end of most of the Arsenal attacks? Obviously, we had the likes of Pepe and Smith-Rowe occasionally taking shots as well. You have to also ask the question, if Lacazette and Aubameyang were playing yesterday, would it have been a different story given the amount of chances and shots that we managed to create throughout the game? Now, last season, we were accused of not creating enough chances, and this tells a very, very different story. So there are some positives to take away from that. I think yesterday Brentford just seemed far more up for the game, full of confidence. It's their first Premier League game in the top flight for well over 70 years. Crowds, fans back in the stadium, and they were certainly riding on all of that. Not that I'm making excuses, of course. It was a very well-deserved victory, and Arteta, with a lot of question marks hanging over certain players, tactics, formations, you name it. So if we look towards the left-hand side now, the graphic there, we can see corners, offsides, big chances. There's a few things there to analyse. One big positive to take from that is that we had 13 shots inside the box, going back to what I said a moment ago, had we had a Lacazette or an Aubameyang there, it could have been a very, very different story. And then towards the right-hand side, we've got things like passes, the accuracy of those passes, long balls, crosses, the majority of which all in Arsenal's favour. So for me, it was a case of Arsenal being that typical in-possession team, trying to break a team down. Brentford, they like to press, they kept their shape very, very well, and they hit us on the counter-attack. And the other very frustrating thing for me, at least yesterday, was that, again, Arsenal playing out from the back, and we weren't necessarily punished, but you can see that there are some similarities to last season, which could potentially come back to bite us in the backside at a later stage in this season. And to no surprise, if we look at the stats at the very bottom of the screen now, the majority of those tackles and clearances coming from Brentford, which, to be fair, considering Arsenal had most of the ball yesterday, is relatively correct. So some good stats there to digest and take in. By all means, pause the video at this point, look at them at your own leisure. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments once again, if there are some positives that we can take from this. In this next slide, we have heat maps and the average positioning of each player in their respective formations, with Brentford on the left and Arsenal on the right. Now, these heat maps do not surprise me because Arsenal had 65% possession, and of the two, you can see here that Arsenal certainly have the busier of the two heat maps, with Brentford looking like they spent the majority of their game in their own half, limited to counter-attacks, which wasn't always the case. There were occasions where Brentford had pressure on Arsenal's back line for 5-minute spells. Now, Kieran Tierney spent a lot of time in the opposition's half, and you can see here there is a slightly deeper red in the top left-hand corner. However, we can also see a slightly deeper red in the bottom right-hand corner on Arsenal's heat map. And that's because Brentford were certainly targeting those diagonals. And I think if we look back at our pre-season friendlies, it was an area that potentially clubs moving forward can exploit, because Arsenal do like to get forward with our fullbacks. Now, if we have a little look at the average positioning of both teams, Brentford spent the most part in their own half, with only 3 of their players spending the majority of their game in Arsenal's half. And then if we look at Arsenal's average positioning, we've got Mauri, Ben White and Chambers sort of sitting back, with the rest of the Arsenal team sort of pushing on and looking to create chances. The only frustration I take from this is I'd like our attacking players to potentially be a little higher up the pitch, considering we had 65% possession and 22 shots in the game. I don't want to overanalyze this, but take from it what you will and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. So before we finish up in today's video, I wanted to briefly touch upon some of the comments made by Arteta in his post-match interview, as well as giving you guys some of my thoughts just generally about the game. Obviously, the result was a very disappointing one. You want to start off every Premier League campaign, regardless of who you are as a club or who you face, with a win and 3 points. It builds momentum, it builds confidence. Now, obviously, there will need to be some changes heading into the Chelsea game. They're a much tougher and a much better opposition. They finished the season very, very strong. Champions League winners. Tuchel's got them playing very, very well. And they even won the Super Cup the other day. Maybe if we did have an Aubameyang or a Lacazette, maybe both if we're lucky, coming into a game against Chelsea, and we create half the amount of chances and have a fair share of possession, we could be in a much better position. Of late, we've had some very good results against Chelsea, but nevertheless, it's going to be a really, really tough game either way. And also something that was touched upon was generally the transfer activity between now and the end of August. Arsenal fans generally aren't happy about the transfer activity. They wanted to see bigger signings, more signings, and I think that we will probably go out and buy a creative midfield player, potentially even a backup goalkeeper. Smith Rowe and Leno, if either one of those get injured or tired, we don't have a creative midfield player, we don't have a backup goalkeeper. It could be a really, really sour situation to be in. I do expect Arsenal to go out and buy these types of players. Obviously, Arteta isn't going to kind of give anything away during an interview. But my general thoughts with regards to the game, Brentford, they just wanted it more. The fans in the stadium had a huge, huge impact. I think Balogun up top, although it was very nice for him to get his debut, it might have been a stretch too far for him. And Lokonga, again, he looked decent as well. Some spells fairly good on the ball, but you can certainly see that we need a party and a better focal point up front. So let's see what happens in some of these future games. Let me know your thoughts down below on the comments made by Arteta and also your general thoughts about the game. So that brings yet another episode of the Arsenal Box to a close. I would have much preferred to have been sharing these stats and figures with you off the back of a win. I would have even taken a little 1-0 if possible. We've got some big games coming up in the next few weeks, and of course I'll be breaking all of those down with Chelsea up next. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do subscribe and drop a like. It really helps the channel out, and it shows me that you guys are enjoying this type of content. Do leave your comments down below as well. I will get back to each and every one of you. Follow me over on Twitter, as before every game I do a score prediction and first goal scorer prediction. And if you were to get either one of those right, you'd get a shout out in a future video. For now, I'm JC, and I'll catch you in the next one.